Hi, everyone. Thanks very much indeed for joining us here today. I'm excited to host today's discussion of humanizing the digital experience. And I have two great industry luminaries here with me. And so, Michael, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Thank you, Bernadette. I'm Michael Klein. I'm the principal of Klein4Retail Consulting. I'm a legacy retailer. I grew up on the shop floor here in New York City, working for Dean & DeLuca and Balducci's and other food companies, and then moved out west for brands like Williams-Sonoma, Louis Vuitton Group, Wine.com. Moved over to the tech side in 2008 for Adobe and Omniture, and for 14 years I was a global director of industry strategy and marketing. And for the last year, I've been out on my own as a consultant contractor, as a advisor to brands like Algolia, helping with the go-to-market messaging and thought leadership to address the retail industry.
And I think you're being a little modest. You won an award recently too, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I was named this past week as one of the 2024 top retail experts by Rethink Retail. So I'm very honored and humbled by that accolade.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Josh.
Thanks, Bernadette. I'm Josh Platt. I'm SVP of Product and Design for Rue Gilt Groupe. We're a fashion e-commerce business. We spent about the last decade or so working in consumer e-commerce. Prior to Rue Gilt Groupe, I was Chief Product Officer at a company called Retail Me Not. And before that, I led product and design for Nordstrom.com, our website, and our mobile apps.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being with us here today. I'm Bernadette Nixon. I'm the CEO of Algolia, and I'm very happy to be our host for the discussion. As we think about humanizing the digital experience, obviously what is on the tip of everybody's tongue is AI or generative AI. And when you take a look at some of the stats behind that, it's predicted that over the next 4 years, that it will add between 2.5 or 4.5, depending upon whose predictions you believe, value to the global economy. So, seeing as we're here at NRF, what kind of impact is that going to have in the retail space specifically? If you think about the highest impact that can have, Michael, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so you can't go down an aisle at the show and not see AI at least a dozen times. So, we certainly, it's not a trend, it's here. We certainly have had trends over the past few years like the metaverse, which really didn't take as much as we all think AI will. When we think about efficiency, the promise of conversational commerce, that's what we've been working on together. And a piece that I wrote that we're really at an inflection point that with AI, computing, the speed, large language models will really be able to deliver on this promise of conversational commerce where we can bring a human-like experience to the digital space. I think we're also going to see huge efficiency gains in terms of how AI can help internal, and I know we'll be talking about that a little bit more in our session today, as well as we'll be talking a little bit more about being able to deliver on the promise of personalization and really being able to deliver truly on this idea of personalization at scale. Maybe not exactly one-to-one, but at least one-to-few, and get more granular in how we segment our audiences, and then bring content leveraging AI as well as product information quicker and faster, and not putting a burden on the enterprise and the organization.
And it's interesting because I know at Rue Gilt Groupe, you're experimenting right now, as I think a lot of organizations are. And you have a perspective that it's not just all about conversational commerce. That's one element of a generative shopping experience. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing at RGG, if you would, Josh.
Absolutely, Bernadette. I think one of the interesting proof of concepts that we're investing in right now relates to our stylist program. And so like a lot of fashion e-commerce players, we do have a stylist program, and we work with a lot of our higher net customers at the end of the day. So it's really a very important capability. as part of our selling strategy. However, a lot of how styling programs work today is basically you're in a situation where you're working off the stylist knowledge of your inventory and what that particular customer might be interested in. And so I think what we're trying to do is use text-based AI. So when we have these interactions with our stylist program, how can we help our stylists through AI actually have a better understanding of how we might personalize based on that member's interests. So if that specific customer says, hey, I'm looking for a puffer jacket in exchange with one of our stylists, we're actually using AI to help that stylist bring to life a series of options that might actually be relevant for that customer and tap into sort of a wider breadth of inventory that we have, as opposed to really how these solutions work today, where you're really just working off of the stylist knowledge. So our hope is that we're going to be able to better personalize those interactions and help that customer find the right product that's most relevant to them using AI.
And it's interesting because there's a couple of things I'd love to draw out from what you've just said, Josh, insofar as, so you're thinking about your stylists and your merchandisers' productivity, and then, you know, you can't have a conversation about Gen AI without thinking about, well, is it going to hallucinate or is it going to pick things that I carry? So maybe just comment on those couple of things, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the notion, one of the interesting things I think with AI and, you know, the term hallucinating when you actually get into those situations, I think something that a lot of people maybe don't understand who are less familiar with the space, generative really works on top of existing models. And so really you're not using generative AI to create per se a personalization strategy. You're taking an existing model, whether it's a next logical product model or a similar styles or an outfitting model, and you're using generative on top of it to actually improve that experience. And so how I think you start to avoid those hallucination situations where, you know, your generative provides really kind of a crazy response. That's what we mean when we're saying hallucinating. It doesn't make sense. I think when you use generative in concert with your existing models, then you avoid some of those tricky situations with hallucination.
Yeah, and that's where coming down to your particular product catalog, which you're going to have in your search engine of choice. Obviously, you know, we see that a lot with our Algolia customers wanting to then build upon top of that. So the interesting thing is, you mentioned, Michael, personalization. And that's what your stylists are trying to do as well, but you're trying to scale them and you're trying to expose other parts of the catalog in doing so. So I was on a road trip, a tour just before the holidays, and every single conversation I had with customers was about personalization. Now, and it's kind of one of those topics. It's been around since 1999. It's not quite delivered upon its promise, but we're on the brink of it being able to do so, I think. So would love to hear your perspective, Michael.
Well, I agree that we're on the brink, and I also completely agree that I've often called it the personalization gap, where we've, as retailers and brands, we've tried to deliver on personalization, but there's a gap to what the consumer is actually getting. And because of the speed, the ability to bring in AI now, and personalization at scale across so many hundreds of thousands, millions of customers, whatever the brand may be, is very challenging to do when you're just leveraging perhaps business rules to drive your customer experience. But now with AI and Gen AI, both the traditional and the generative artificial intelligence, we can really deliver on that promise like never before. And we're going to see huge advancements as we come into the coming years. And it's not just around the text. It's what we're seeing with the likes of a Levi's, where they can actually personalize based on whether it be gender, whether it be body, whether it be color of skin. There are so many other parameters now that they can use generative AI to then deliver a much more personalized experience and become relevant to that consumer.
How does that work in your group, Josh? Because when you think about it, you think of Rue Gilt Groupe and you think of the treasure hunt. So there's very much coming across the unexpected, but yet you want it to be relevant, you want it to be personalized. So how are you guys thinking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the $64 question. What we're really trying to do is look at, today on our homepage experience, we use data science to actually personalize what we're putting in front of the member who opens our app or opens our website. However, generative's essentially going to be an accelerator in terms of how we help that customer find that specific item that's most relevant to them. And so that's really kind of the next generation that we see with personalization as we start to move forward. How do we layer generative on top of existing experiences and really start to hone in what that specific customer is actually looking for?
And obviously there's a benefit to your member or the consumer at that point, but there's also a pretty significant benefit, I would imagine, to the merchandising team, because you're giving them control. So it's not all manual or all automated. You're wanting to give them the control and the visibility to be able to make those decisions, in the moment that they need. So there's almost like a merchandising co-pilot that I'm guessing you would love to see evolve.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a lot of how we merchandise our boutiques, and when I say boutiques, we have, sometimes they're brand boutiques or sometimes they're category boutiques. A lot of that is done through manual curation. And so generative is a huge opportunity in terms of how do we actually not just provide the customer a more relevant experience, but also how do we start to save time and give productivity back to our merchandising team so they can really start to focus on higher value activities?
It's interesting. I came across a stat recently, and it was focused on fashion. And the stat was that I think it was a McKinsey study, 73% of fashion retailers, fashion brands, are going to prioritize generative shopping experiences in the next 12 months. However, only 5% of them, 5%, have the skill set, have the talent to be able to deliver on it. That's one. I mean, you talked about a gap in personalization. That's one heck of a talent to skills gap. How are you going to rationalize that? I think I would love to. You get a great purview of that across the whole industry, Michael. How are you seeing people try to solve that problem?
And as Josh indicated, we're really at a point where we can focus our resources at higher value activities. But the big challenge, as you pointed out, is how do we really reskill? How do we, as organizations, start to put a little bit more resource and energy behind education and really enabling our resources and the new upcoming workforce they need to embrace that, and that's where we're going to start to see some of these skills. And unfortunately, those that are kind of living in the past and are not yet embracing this are going to have to quickly really get up to speed because their tasks are going to be challenged, and they're going to need to embrace this in order to find those higher value activities that Gen AI, if you think about a product catalog and what we can do now with Gen AI to be able to deliver the product details, the text, and how artificial intelligence can help that efficiency. But then the skill is going to be in how do we make sure that there's curation, there's governance, there's oversight, so that that speaks to the brand, it's within the brand style and the parameters, and it delivers on that great customer experience. But we're not going to see the army of copywriters and folks developing product detail pages like we've seen in the past, and folks are going to have to adjust for that.
I think it's who wouldn't want the assist, frankly. How's it impacting you, Josh?
Well, in terms of the assist, Bernadette, I mean, I think it's a huge point. Fashion e-commerce is a mature business. And so at the end of the day, most retailers are really interested in how they can take some of those more mundane activities and actually start to automate that work and use the people that are part of their organizations actually to focus on these higher value things at the end of the day. So, it's I think, really going to be embraced almost out of necessity, given some of the challenges that the industry is really facing right now.
I've also I've stolen the term. I'm not the originator of the term, but I'm a big believer that artificial intelligence will not replace your job, but a human using artificial intelligence will replace your job. So it's the fear of AI taking jobs away is not a complete reality, because it is this idea of co-pilot and assistance and efficiency, but we are still going to need humans in the mix, and it's those humans that embrace AI that are going to leap ahead of others.
And I mean, I'm sure you do as well. We see customers and companies at different ends of that spectrum today. So some have just a small gap to travel, and others have quite substantial. So it's going to be, I would say the next 18 months is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, we always talk about the crawl, walk, run, and having self-awareness of where you are in that journey, because not everybody, as Josh indicated, apparel e-commerce has been out there for many years. But you think about grocery, and grocery is well behind other industries because they just, until the pandemic, really didn't put the same amount of effort and energy into e-commerce because it was such a minuscule part of their business, less than 5% typically. But now they're realizing, so everybody is coming into this game at a different point of maturity. And there does need to be a certain sense of self-awareness of where you are, so that you don't go after the bright and shiny and try to do something that maybe a Walmart is doing or RGG, and really understanding what is going to deliver the most value for your organization today versus trying to do another whatever the big story is on the keynote at NRF of somebody doing something amazing and trying to aspire to that if you're just not ready for it.
It's a great point, actually, and it reminds me of a conversation I was having this morning with one of the industry analysts, and they were saying that they're seeing a huge amount of experimentation, no news there, in the Gen AI and e-commerce just generally right now, but that everybody is trying to get on that bandwagon, and not everybody has the deep pockets that allow for that. So I think understanding and having that self-awareness as to whether you're one of those companies that is able to do that, or whether you need AI as a service to help you and to augment you getting there faster. So with that said, I guess that would be my prediction, is that it's AI as a service that will help the vast majority of organizations to get where they need to be on this journey in the next 18 months. What other predictions would you guys have? Josh?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think, in our space, in fashion e-commerce, I think one of the biggest opportunities, depending on the nature of your business, most fashion e-commerce businesses see anywhere from 20 to 40% return rates. And a lot of what drives those return rates are size and fit. So for those that aren't maybe as familiar with the industry, we really don't have normalized sizes in fashion. One brand size 6 is another brand size 12. So really, a lot of those returns that we see in the industry are driven by normalized sizing or fit and lack thereof. And I think what generative really has the power to help with is that. It's helping brands, helping retailers start to normalize sizes and start to drive out a huge cost for most fashion e-commerce players as it relates to returns. And so that's one of the opportunities that I'm really excited about, that really just plagues every retailer at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you only have to pick up any of the industry rags and you hear about the era of returns ending and them no longer being free any longer. So it's a real industry issue. If size and fit can truly be solved, it's a game changer for the margin, the bottom line.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we all understand that free shipping and free returns, it's a little bit like a drug. We train the consumer to expect free shipping and returns. So really the barrier to returning just isn't there. And so the chickens are coming home to roost per se. And I think the industry really needs to work through that size and fit problem if we're seriously going to address returns in the industry.
Cool. Michael, what are you seeing?
I think it comes down to speed and convenience. We're going to see, and again, as we walk through the aisles of NRF here in New York, 2024, so much is focused around speed and convenience. The customer has already told us that they want things when they want it, how they want it, in the right location. So, right product in the right place at the right time. So I think we're going to see huge advancements there, and that's going to drive all parts of the organization. I also, not just from an AI perspective, I'm a believer that while it won't be the same flavor as we've seen in Asia, video shopping is also going to have an uptick. I've saw several and have spoken to several companies that are exhibiting here at NRF 2024, and there's no shortage of those type of tech providers that are allowing video to become shoppable. And whether it's the TikTok influence and some of the things we've seen coming out of Asia with influencer and one-to-many, I think this one-to-one and one-to-few video shopping also has an interesting play in always-on commerce, and that customer and the consumer always wanting in their pocket, in their hand, to be able to interact, transact, shop, explore, discover from wherever they may be. So I think that speed, that convenience, that enablement, both in the format and also internally as the enterprise, in getting the product to the right destination in the right place as quickly as possible, is where we're going to continue to see those advancements.
Well, that's it for today, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and hope you enjoyed the discussion.